some experiences are in fact traumatizing in themselves. I'm speaking in relation to certain situations completely formulating you into a whole new wholesome being, and you not being the same individual you once were, say in your former years. Life will take you to steps where it will completely alter you, shape you, and cast away all things. The very thing in which I'm speaking on is in fact spiritual enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment. I say it like that. However you choose to say it. Being enlightened. Being vibrant. Radiating somewhat of a light. Even when no one is around. It's been said that the real you is the individual in which no one sees, as in when no one is around. That is in fact the real you. Because see, to walk out the door and interact with others, say those in the public realm, is to put on a mask. Is to put on various faces in which at times you are not, and yet to gain public acceptance as human beings are known. Because way in the ancient times you had to do things for acceptance purposes. If not, you were in fact killed. Yes, way back in ancient times. That's why you had tribes, and tribes had to follow strict codes and all that other stuff like that in order to mix in with the other beings, because to not is to in fact be killed off. See, in life it's all about acceptance. I'm saying an interaction with other individuals. It is, as well as being yourself more than anything. But notice sometimes how we're forced to put various pieces away of ourselves in order to actually gain acceptance from others. We are. Because to be fully yourself and say not consider the feelings of others is to almost be thrown away by those others. Yes. So, to be called out for what you are, to be hated for what you are because you're completely being you, and yet sometimes people can't deal with it, which is why many people put on a fake false front, as in a face which is not completely themselves or completely even their itself, to gain acceptance and acknowledgement by others. That's all tribal mindset. It is. It's part of the survival process. Because once again, to be completely too different from others is to be completely shunned. And yet for some individuals, many of them are not willing to play that game or even the acceptance ordeal. They rather just stand outside and lead by example by showing others how it's done. Yes. I myself is one of those individuals. I really don't like to walk around with a mask on my face in order to be accepted by others. Because even the challenge itself is being able to fully express yourself for who you are and who you want to be in front of those, whether they're willing to accept it or not. It is. That's how I was in my past, and how I still am somewhat today, although I'm like evolving in a sense for betterment. So, trying to be more of a spiritual individual, but not in the term speaking religion, not being fully religious, right? Not being that, but trying to be a total and complete opposite of what you once were. Trying to, as with age comes with progress, as in progressing, trying to make progression, as in steps in time to move forward to bigger, brighter things, even in the sense of getting more fully in touch with your internal being, as well as your source, living out your full calling here in life. But yeah, some things in relation to spiritual trying to be a enlightened individual, you know, that in itself can be very traumatizing, let me say. Going through the spiritual awakening process, as in to become a complete enlightened individual. The spiritual awakening process can be very, very traumatizing. Yes, it can. It could almost even be near death, as in feeling as if you're experiencing a near-death experience as it is happening, and not for just 1 year, but over a matter of a few years. Spiritual awakenings is not a one-time fits all. Let's do it now and get it over with. Sometimes spiritual awakening, as in being on a path to become enlightened, sometimes that very thing can take years. That's why I said it's traumatizing. It's almost a tormenting process. Yes, it is. It feels like your whole everything, physical, such as bodily, spiritual, your mind, everything. It feels like during that process of when you drop down, say as in everything being that was once attached to you being yanked away, sometimes you can drop down in a dark pit. When I started going through my spiritual awakening process, that is what, in fact, what was happening to me. You can even go as far as almost hallucinating. Yes, you can. And not only that, your body vibrating, you starting to see things before they happen, as in possessing almost what is like a psychic type gift, and yet you go into these trance states as is while it's happening. And not only that, stuff get to flickering where you can see images of what is to come before it comes. That's all the whole part. That's a part of the whole spiritual awakening process. I went through all that in 2010. When I say hallucinations, I don't mean in a sense hearing voices. When I say hallucinations, I mean in the form of seeing pictures and pixels of events before they have yet to come. Yes, I've witnessed that. And even before 2010, but for some unknown reason during the year of 2010, my senses became more heightened, as in me being more on alert. Being able to see what was coming. It was almost as if I was watching images on a projection screen pertaining to somewhat of my future, and even pertaining to other individuals. So when I say hallucinations, that's what I mean. To see stuff that's not there, and yet it's directing your path, like in a sense of where you're going, and even showing other people's path, that in itself could be considered almost a hallucination, and yet no voices is there. It's just all in image form. And I say that because many doctors don't believe in that thing. If you say, well, I hallucinated, where I saw stuff before it happened, a doctor would try to prejudge and diagnose you with schizophrenic, and yet that's not in fact what that is. Because if you tell that doctor, you know what, your wife is going to in fact die next year, right? And you tell the doctor that, and you're letting him know, he's like, you don't even know me like that to be telling me that. And then next thing you know, his wife ends up dying the following year, and yet you've seen it before. So who's to tell you that to see visuals like that in the process, who's to tell you that's a no-go? As in something being wrong with you because you're seeing stuff as it's happening as well as before. There's many people that don't believe in that thing until it happens to them, as in the spiritual awakening process, right? They don't. Spiritual awakening process is very real. Very, very, very real. I said that before in the opening. It's completely, highly traumatizing. You become completely engulfed in fear. All type of things be going on. Everything around you just makes you, it seems like everything around you makes you seem completely sensitive. Everything. You're sensitive to everything around you. Every move, every step, every sound people make, every collision, whether it's a car accident that you was right in front of, you know, loudspeakers driving past in the back of people's vehicles. All that type of stuff seem as if it's screaming at you. And yet all it is you being woke up spiritually. To be sleep to something, as in spirituality and needing to be woke to be sleep, is to hear nothing at all. It's to see nothing at all. It's to let everything bypass your senses. And yet to be completely woke is to see everything for what it is and hear everything for what it is right in front of your very eyes. Even sometimes when it's not even saying anything at all. That's the spiritual awakening process. 2010, I can say, when it comes to that, I could say that was probably my lowest point in life ever, 2010, somewhere around that time. Because a time period in itself even masked. That time period masked many things of which I couldn't see. And yet I knew something wasn't right. I knew something wasn't right, and I could feel during that time that something wasn't right. And yet various images was playing out before my eyes of me seeing steps and everything as I was going before I would go. Seeing things before it happened is to never know how the actual thing is going to play out. That's what I'm trying to say. Even when I seen a dream, when I said about that Oprah Winfrey situation, when I seen a dream, and she and I, as well as various individuals, were on an elevator going up. I didn't know where in fact that was leading to, as in pointing to. And even I spoke on that when I said the art of letting go, as in not clasping too much, holding on and just letting things, allowing things to be as they will. But I think there's other individuals that hold the gift that I have, where sometimes I can't always see what is for me, but in the past I've seen other situations in relation to other people, as in what is coming for their life. Yes, before it comes, that's in fact a gift. See, to see other things for other people for their life before you see your own is to know and say that gift is supposed to be used for something outside of yourself. The gift intensifies whenever you go through spiritual enlightenment, being enlightened. When you go through that process, that gift will in fact heighten along with everything else. You know, to see too far into the future before it comes sometimes is enough to stress you out to even start your process of, say, a burial plot. No, I'm just playing. That's a joke. But it is. It's a terrifying, when I said burial plot, it's enough to make your heart stop, is what I'm trying to say. It is. Because some people, I remember when I was going through my spiritual awakening process, right? I did not think I would live through that. I did not think I would live through that at all. Some people have actually went through the actual spiritual awakening process and never lived through it. They never came out the other side, is what I'm trying to say. There's many people right now dead and gone in their grave because they couldn't really mentally and physically put the pieces together on how to actually get through that spiritual awakening process. It killed them dead right there on the spot, even before they got through it, as in passing through, transitioning. There's a transition period to all this waking up spiritually. You don't go from point A to point Z and say, you know what, I'm here. You don't. There's a transition process. And so 2010 once again was the worst ever of my spiritual process. Waking up. That was by far the worst out of all my experiences living here on this earth, going on almost 40 years. I can say God knows, universe knows, that was the most worst ever devastating point in my life. That was even worse than my own father's death. It was. To lose somebody close to you is to understand and know the very pain of what you feel, right? As it is happening. And yet this spiritual awakening process, nothing compares to that, not even death itself. As in losing somebody close to you and grieving, that spiritual awakening process has nothing completely on death itself or any other traumatizing experience. Part of that, even right now, see, sometimes in life, stuff can stand right before you and be so traumatizing, as I said before, in the various twists, as in being guided by the universe or whoever. Some of this could be so traumatizing. What's the word for it? People have in fact taken their own life because of the experience of the spiritual awakening. Being woke up was so traumatizing, and them going, see, in order to become elevated, you gotta go through various sections in the process, as in going up, as in being propelled forward as well as upward. You can't just say, oh, I want to get to here to get to there, without there being, as I said before, a transition going through. Everything has steps being led as you go, and yet some people's minds are fragile enough to not be able to withstand that awakening process, which come to know is how many people have in fact ended up deceased, as I said before, killing themselves, because to not really fully know how to get through a spiritual awakening, as in saying somebody taking your hand and them guiding you and saying it's going to be all right, is to know that you might not actually make it through. You might not. And so back around that time period, I didn't know what was to be said. I know that I wasn't going to kill myself in the process. I know that that wasn't going to happen, right? I knew that that wasn't going to happen. And yet my soul and my spirit was crying out for something to help save me and pull me out of the realm of defeat, as in that pit I was going through, in order to rise on the high rise, going up towards the sky, moving upward. Yeah, that in itself was the most worst. That in itself it doesn't compare to anything else. Let me say, some of us been through some very trying, hard times, as in hardships in life, in which many of us don't speak on. We don't. Just the worst. The worst. That's all. I'm repeating myself. That's the complete worst situation. And even today, looking back, some of that plays out in my mind, where stuff like that, see, when traumatizing things happen, even in being spiritually awakened, that's traumatizing, man. Stuff like that, it has a tendency to fragment your mind, as in your mind being completely becoming separated, as in being almost deteriorated, broken down in the process. As they say, to be broken down is to be rebuilt for betterment. That's the point in position. Some people have to go through deep, traumatizing spiritual awakening processes, even to obtain more in life. See, you got some people in life that when they say they're going to do something, they speak that out into the universe, and then it happens right before their very eyes, or sometimes it takes longer, moments longer, say as in years catching up later on, right? And then sometimes for others, they have to go through the devastation, as in their mind almost being weakened, broken down, divided, fragmented, whatever you want to say. Completely just broken, as in shattered, to be rebuilt, bits and pieces added as you go. See, because to be broken down, like they say in the military, to be broken down, which my father served Vietnam Marine. Yes, he did, as well as receive awards. You know about the Purple Heart type of stuff. So to be broken down is to completely be shattered, as in open up, cracked open in various bits and pieces. Sometimes blocks are pulled out of you as other bigger, brighter pieces are added to you. And that's got to continue on during the process to build you back. Because to be awakened means you can no longer be asleep, as in falling asleep. And what better way to fall asleep as if there's still old pieces within you, which could in fact halt your steps, as in not taking you fully there. Those pieces have to be shedded out as you go. They got to be pulled and plucked out as you go. So you have to take time as an investment. And for those that say a spiritual awakening is forced upon them, as in the initiation process, it's an initiation process with everything. Even in the realm of spiritual awakening, where it's forced on you when you didn't even ask for it to be. It comes and it just speaks to you like, I'm here, it's time to wake up. You gotta shed old things, as in old cloths, in small pieces. Because to become something of greatness, and say to carry that old stuff of which had you sleep in the first place, as in completely dark, is to mess it up in the future. Which is why it's got to be ripped off you. And while you're going through that spiritual awakening process, you feel it the whole time. You feel everything being ripped away. Everything. Non-attachment. I never knew anything about non-attachment, as in the art of detachment. Even that. Deepak Chopra, you ever heard of him? He speaks a lot in the realm of the art of detachment. Letting go, not hanging on to all type of things. With that, I had to learn that during my spiritual awakening process, and I'm still today struggling somewhat with that. I won't say completely struggling, but trying to make it through with that. Trying not to hold on to old strings, as in no strings attached. Allowing things to be loose and free, right? But it's interesting. It's intriguing when you feel everything being ripped away from you. It's the absolute worst feeling. That's why I said it. That's why I kept saying it was traumatizing. How many times have I repeated? To know something is traumatizing is to know it stands there. And it's painful, deeply painful in the process. The things in which I have experienced, I don't even want to go there ever again. As in, to not ever be repeated. I just always, because see, to know that there's 7.6 billion people all across the world is to one day question various people. What are some of the most traumatizing things they've been through, and what do they remember? See, to go through a trauma is to know that a memory piece has in fact been embedded there. As in a strike against you, kind of like for life, as in where you can't forget how it happened and how it played out. some trauma you never let go of. You let go of, say, what it done to help shape you, and sometimes you never really disregard the memory because the pain was at its complete worst, right? So now moving into the next topic of assisted suicide. I was gonna make a video in relation to that before this, but something woke me up and said, speak on spiritual awakening. Had to get that out. But assisted suicide. Assisted suicide is, by medical terms, where, say, a Dr. Kevorkian take it upon himself to, say, possibly not rid the earth, as in not discard, as get rid of a patient, and yet say a patient that is completely bedridden. They might not can talk, or maybe they can. They might can't feed themselves, or maybe they can. Maybe they have a terminal illness. More than likely they do. Some do and some don't. It depends on the situation. And yet, what do I think and feel about assisted suicide? In the manner of a Dr. Kevorkian walking in the room and helping a patient that, say, can't do anything for themselves. I'm for that in a sense where a person is completely bedridden and say they have a deep terminal illness and they're not going to ever live and outgrow that, say, like how Stephen Hawking had, him working with and through NASA, when he died having a ALS. I don't know why I can't get my words out today. I'm going through that. Probably because I'm tired. Stephen Hawking and having the ALS and what he had. That was in fact a terminal illness. Right? Let me pause for 1 second. I don't know why I'm tired. I'm like completely sleepy. Probably because, what time did I went to sleep? More likely I'm tired because I went to sleep about 6, 7. I think I went to sleep about 7:30. And then I had to get back up at 11. So more likely that's why. But Stephen Hawking. Him, for example. A man about his word. Completely and sincerely. Highly revered by the world, yet taken too soon, as in too young. A man at his age was still too young. Anything before 80 years old is too young. It is. The honest to God truth. So, for a Dr. Kevorkian type to walk in the room and say, put out the lights of, say, a Stephen Hawking. If a Stephen Hawking or anybody of his magnitude, and even somebody that doesn't have that extreme status, say a normal developing individual, if they were to suffer, have pain and everything else, and they're completely bedridden, what do I think and feel about the assisted suicide? In that arena, I'm completely for it. Because I don't want nobody to sit as well as lay amongst me anywhere in American society, and yet they're completely suffering and being bedridden, and knowing that there is no progression above that. See, some of these patients are bedridden to the fact there's no getting up from that, as in that's their life. My eyelashes. I'm sorry. My eyelashes feel like they're coming off and yet sticking and like tickles. So, some people's lot in life is to be nothing more than bedridden. There's even children like that, very young children, you know, having being born, even some of them being born with terminal illness from birth, right? Some of them is not going to make it much more further in life than that. Yet they could have, in fact, extra outside activities, say as extracurricular activities, and yet their situation might not get no better, as in further in the realm of physicality, having a terminal illness and speaking on that type of thing. Like, but who knows? They say a miracle is bound to happen as in a possibility, and yet I myself, in fact, go for reality of life, as in accepting things for the way that they are, until, say, when the miracle in fact shows up. Because sometimes to just think and speak too positive over a matter in which you're thinking is going to be completely better, and yet it doesn't show itself after, so many years, is to know it's minute, as in that situation might not never change. So you got to get used to it, as in accepting it for what it is, a terminal illness. And the individual, say, possibly struggling and dealing with that on an everyday, day-to-day basis ordeal, right? So if they're in physical, deep, heavy pain, and there's no resolution as in resolving that thing, it's to know to put them to bed. As in, if the family requests, or even if they request assisted suicide, is to allow that very thing to become a possibility in their world. See, to accept as well as take interest to people's requests is to acknowledge that very thing. Even assisted suicide, because who am I to say that if that person is begging to go and say, because I've heard elderly people whine and cry out about the fact that they're tired, their body is tired, because they know that their body is giving out, and yet their family wants to continue to cling and hold on to them, and yet to cling and to hold on to somebody who's in deep pain and sorrow because their body is basically traumatizing them, is to allow an assisted suicide to take place. Why would I see somebody that's 65 knowing that they're suffering from something that they're never going to be able to put away, as in get rid of, and yet they're on their back? They can't take a shower, they can't get out the bed to feed themselves, they can't get out of the bed to do anything. Why would I say, well, I just want to continue to have that person here with me when they're crying to be let go of? As in them wanting a doctor who's licensed to assist them in that process. I support that. Yes, I do. Some might not agree with me, and yet I wouldn't want nobody to allow me to be anywhere in nobody's bed deep in pain, knowing that this situation is not going to be better, and yet family and friends tell me we just still want you here. There's people right now that are trying to smoke medical marijuana in order to relieve that pain, as in helping them to get out that situation. Because to have bodily deep pain, agonizing pain, is to feel it. And yet some of these medications in which doctors prescribe is not enough, which is why many individuals, in fact, smoke medical marijuana. I support that as well. Children are known to drink cannabis oil because that's more pure for them. I support that type of thing. You can't really go against other people's pain, is what I'm trying to say, in the realm of them needing to relieve that pain if they're a medical patient. I'm not talking about every normal walking individuals amongst us here in society that are able to function up to their full capacity despite them individuals having problems. Them people still can take it upon themselves to get up and walk and stand and go and be anywhere at any time of the day. And yet a bedridden individual who can't do anything, they can't even change their own diapers or briefs or whatever they call it in the medical field. The things that you wear where you pee and poop, and you got to have somebody else come wipe your butt and throw the diaper in the trash after you done peed and soiled yourself, as in pooped, made a mistake. or purposely pooped, however, those type of people are deep in suffering. So to help them end that suffering is to, provide the request, as in them themselves getting out of a situation, as in leaving a situation, this thing called life itself. I'm not one to sit anywhere. I keep scratching. Notice that I keep scratching because it's getting hot outside, right? And not only that, I recently took a shower. And so, you know how you when you take a shower, you scrub, right? And then in the end, you kind of dry. So when you start to sweat, which I'm sweating some now, you start to in fact itch. Yes, itchy. My back is itching. My skin is itching. My leg is itching. But I'm not one to sit and just watch people lay in pain like that. That's agonizing. That's like a child wearing a diaper. They're in their crib or their playpen, and yet the needle is stuck in their side. And yet the child keeps screaming and screaming and screaming about the needle pin being stuck in their side, as in it need to be pulled out. Maybe that child needs some better diapers instead of the cloth diapers in which they're laying in. And yet the caregiver, being the parent, says, no, he's just fine. He's all right. Just leave him as is. And yet the child is still screaming. And yet as he's screaming, the needle is going more and more into his leg. That's traumatizing. For a young child, for a baby, for an infant to lay in a crib like that, and the caregiver know that a needle is completely, and not only that, is in his side, not only that, his whole side is turning red. To allow something like that to turn red is to lead to infection, in which it can. And so for me to stop that, as in being part of the process in that, is to remove the needle out of the child's thigh. Me knowing that an elderly individual is suffering and they're halfway on the way out by just pain itself, is allow them to go fully there. As in leaving them alone in their decision of saying assisted suicide, if that's their request. I'm for certain things in which people don't completely agree on. I just don't get into that whole thing of allowing other human beings to be suffering like that. That's a weakness of mine. I don't like to see any type of baby suffer like that, and I really don't like to see any type of elderly individual suffer like that, because people try to say heaven awaits on the other side. Who knows? It may or may not. But to give them that gift, a life, as in the afterlife, if it in fact exists, is to know that peace might be found there, as in awaiting them on the other side, instead of them just, grieving the very pain in which they stand in right here on this earth. So I myself would in fact allow that to happen. I don't like stuff like that. That's one of the reasons why I don't go to funerals no more. I really don't visit people in the hospital like that, like older people. Because, you see old people, sometimes. And even younger people. Like I said, I had a cousin older than me when we were teenagers. He used to be in the bed screaming because of the condition that he had, sickle cell anemia. He used to be screaming and hollering because he was in profuse pain. I never heard anybody scream like that. That type of stuff, I don't like to see and witness pain like that. That's a tragedy in itself. Because you standing there knowing that you can't do anything for that individual. You can't take the pain away. The only thing that is willing to take the pain away for them individuals is, say, the medication, the pain medication. And yet many of the medications have so many various side effects that sometimes make people sick. Which is why they go for medical marijuana, in which I support, as I stated before. See, the talking in cycle is to know where I stand in all this. It is. supporting. But yeah, because see, I support medical marijuana because for me being a kid and having childhood illnesses and then dealing with POTS that I have today, POTS syndrome, is to know and understand that some pain can be involved, and yet my pain is less intense compared to some of these people that have terminal illnesses. You got what I'm saying? Some of the medications that I have taken when I was younger and even growing up made my stomach burn. One of them was like a Tylenol. Is it 600 milligrams? It was either a Tylenol 600 milligrams or 800 milligrams. I know it was really, the milligram was really high. All this sound is driving me nuts. These alarms and buzzers, bells and whistles is driving me nuts today. Only because I feel tired, that's why. But I was given a Tylenol 600 milligram or 800, one of the two I was given. And it made me very sick to the fact I thought my stomach was bleeding because my internal stomach was in fact burning. I had never felt anything like that. To know that your stomach is burning after you take a medication is to know something could be wrong there. Somebody else in our distant family, she was taking some pain medicine and come to find out her inside started bleeding. Yeah, she started bleeding from the inside out some type of way. I guess they called it that through her bowels or something. It was blood and stuff from pain pills. So that's why I support medical marijuana, and yet I myself have never tried it. I can't really smoke weed. Didn't I make a video about that before? I can't really smoke weed. But say if I tried it and say it makes me feel, maybe I'm going to have to try it. See, because I'm an open-minded individual. People that know me know that I'm open-minded. For me to have a condition that I have and yet I'm still forced to work through this actual individual condition of which I have, is to know that there's in fact other alternatives. Medical marijuana is something I never tried before, right? I might have to in fact give me a card just to try it. Not for the intention of high purposes, but just to see what it does for the body. I'm not into smoking no synthetic weed, really. So I would have to check into that, because I'm thinking if it's medical marijuana, I'm thinking it will come straight from the earth. It has to, especially if patients are smoking it. I really don't get into that type of stuff because see, weed, I'm saying the reason why I haven't. When somebody asked me before, have you ever tried medical marijuana? I said to them, when I first tried weed for the first time as a kid, younger, coming up in my early 20s, yes, I was still a kid, I didn't really like that detached feeling that it gave me, feeling real far away, because to have POTS, I already feel that already anyways, feeling real detached far away. My vision and everything is off, which is why I wear shades. It's not to just look cool, but that's why. So that's the only reason why. But if I didn't feel, because see, I'm the type of person, when I do stuff like I wear this hat because it's cool, right? It's part of my style, always have been. This is the same hat I done had for about 10 years, right? But I'm not going to just be smoking weed just because it's a cool in thing. That's not my mindset. I don't really hop on trends, is what I'm trying to say. I do stuff to work out of situation as being a deep, heavy problem solver. One of my deep-seated issues is problem solving. But to try medical marijuana and see what the result is to just see and take it as a no. What can in fact help heal you that's more natural from the earth? Because see, you're eating stuff from the earth anyway. When I take in and consume salads, that's in fact from the earth. When I take in green vegetables, that's from the earth. When I take in fruit, that's from the earth. I like to be more along the realm of going from the earth, and yet once again, I'm wondering, I'm going to have to look that up, and then I'll make a video about it later. What is in fact the side effects of, say, medical marijuana or even cannabis oil? I wonder. I'm gonna have to YouTube to see if there's any terminal patients with, terminal illness that in fact use medical marijuana to get them through the day. Because I came across that, the cannabis and the cannabis oil, but I don't like stuff like, I don't like environments of where people are just using drugs just to say that they use them. I don't like that. Or coming from the environment where I came back, back home environment where people was using drugs and selling drugs because it was the cool thing. I don't like stuff like that. If you're going to use something because it helps you, say, calm your nerves. But not only that, use it in its most natural state. I'm saying everyday individuals, not those that are terminally ill. But when it comes to those that are, in fact, got terminal illness, I tell them to go for that. I stand with them on that cannabis oil. When I was seeing in one of the states during the voting time, and people doing their voter registration, all that other stuff, state to state for particular issues and stuff, I saw where a young child had some type of illness and her parents was trying to pass for the law in the realm of cannabis oil, because one of her illnesses that she has out of many posed the issue of her not being able to function at all. A young child. She had to be like, I think she was like 6 or 7 years old. She was really, really young. So for her to intake and ingest cannabis oil is to know that there's a real problem there, which possibly will never be resolved. And yet to help that young child through is to support the very thing in which she need, because to be young like that sometimes and have a terminal illness is sometimes to not be hungry because of what the regular medications do to you. The medications, the normal medications sometimes can make you so sick and queasy, you don't want to do nothing but sit on the toilet all day with diarrhea. Not only that, be throwing up. Or just say, I'm not hungry at all. But something in the form of natural things, substances that are natural, such as cannabis oil and medical marijuana, even for a young child that has a type of condition that I saw this young individual had, is to know that the medical marijuana is going to force her to eat. Because anything cannabis labeled is to get the munchies. Like they used to say back in the 70s and 80s, I got the munchies from smoking weed or ingesting cannabis oil. So that's why I support the natural herb of the cannabis, even in the oil form. Because if you can't eat through normal medication, is to know you got to add something else on top of it by taking away that medication and putting the medical marijuana there so you can get some food in. Many patients have in fact actually had to do that just so that they can keep weight on their body and gain weight, because that weed make them get the munchies. So as long as it's not synthetic fake stuff that has been sold on the street, I can't really get with that type of thing. That's a no-go. That type of stuff in fact will lead to future medical problems, as in conditions, if not death itself. But going back to assisted suicide, I gotta stand with that. I gotta stand with that for either the babies that are young, not saying infants because their parents make the decision on that, but young, say young children, maybe in their teens, older adults as well as elderly, that's going through that pain, is to help them be unleashed from that. You can't just try to keep somebody here just because you want them here, chained here, so that you can see them. Because remember, when we leave and die, not completely leave this earth, but go to the other side as in transition, we might meet once again. But to force somebody to stay and suffer just because you want to see them every day, that's not going to work. For me and my family, if that was to happen through somebody I know, I can't do that type of thing. I can't allow somebody to suffer right before my very eyes. I had to let them go. As in being willing to go and fly off. Fly off like a dove. Fly off like a songbird. Because even there's freedom in that. Allowing other people to go in the realm of no chains attached. The assisted suicide. I really don't think nothing traumatizing can come out of that. I don't. Because see, we all have to suffer on this end, as in it's a part of the game of life, right? We all have to go through some type of suffering, mental turmoil, physical suffering, day-to-day suffering. That's part of the whole human condition process. It's part of the whole human experience, right? The whole human race experiences that. That's all I'm saying. And yet, to know that you're having to go through that, right? And yet to set a terminal illness on top of that very thing is to know to go outside, as in leaving your very body and being given the freedom to roam the earth as you will in another form, even in being put to death. Not on death row, not lethal injection in that form, but you got what I'm saying. It sounds harsh when I say it like that, but that's the reality of what it is. You're being put to death by assisted suicide by ways of a doctor in a legal room. So, but just to put somebody to death because, well, you can't really, that person, I mean, I guess unless it's power of attorney, I would have to look into that. But to be trying to put people to death just to get their insurance money and policy, that's a no-go. That's a no-go for you to be power attorney. I don't even fully know how that completely works because state to state, various laws change, and they have changed over the years. Things are constantly changing to protect even certain family members where their family try to take it upon themselves to put that individual to death just so that they can get that insurance money, as in the policy and stuff. I'm not with that. Standing over an elderly woman body or man body trying to have them die out so you can get some money out of them. I'm not with that. That type of stuff is a no. Oops, is a complete no-go. And not only that, that type of stuff go around. What goes around comes back around. Understand the transition in life, even in that. So, I think that's all to be said about that. I might make another video over this topic, assisted suicide, as well as the medical marijuana, because I kind of want to know more about medical marijuana. Because even my doctors have asked, you know, even people that don't have conditions, their doctors have, you know, depending on your doctor. See, you got some doctors that are highly closed-minded because remember, they're in the medical field to make money, as in funds, and get paid. And you got some doctors who will actually talk to you and speak you and go on in route of a natural process of trying outside natural ingredients in the realm of medical marijuana, which is also called weed, because them living long enough, them even living in the 70s, some of them have actually smoked weed from the earth. I'm saying many of them were in fact hippies even back then. So, you know, you got some of them that secretly express. And you can't even really say secretly because they're just doing their job to try to help you out with something that's better outside of, say, some of these medications which could help you lead you into disaster. Because see, even in the realm of that, some people are taking medications, such as strong, powerful medications, right, to relieve pain, to the fact that many of these people are getting addicted to painkillers. Which is why you got doctors who are highly open-minded to the fact of discussing, have you ever tried medical marijuana? Because they know that to get hooked on a painkiller or pain medication, sometimes it's to never die. It's to never come out of it. Sometimes it's to die in that very thing of which you became addicted to. That's why doctors, depending on who they are, that's why they'll try to, you know, move you over in that process of trying medical marijuana. finish this video, I'm going to look into that medical marijuana. Because I don't like that. What most people nowadays, the cool kids or people like to consider themselves cool, many of them people are smoking the fake stuff, synthetic stuff that's laced with all type of stuff. It's laced with all type of ingredients which are completely not natural. It's not at all. I want to know. See, my internet is slow because I'm uploading something as I'm talking on it. I'm multitasking. I got a lot of stuff going on over here. I want to know, what is the side effect of the medical marijuana? See, to smoke some marijuana off the street is to know you're going to have all type of issues with that. Because to get something from a dispenser, say you got a medical marijuana card and you go and you get something from a dispenser, in a sense you kind of know where it came from the ground. And yet to get it out of the hands of, say, some young nigga that you don't know is a possibility that he could in fact be jealous of you and try to drug you, as in overdrug you. He can. I don't trust nobody, even young kids out here trying to be cool with other individuals that they don't know, and them getting involved with niggas that smoking weed. You know, I'm saying healthy people or even sick people smoking with people they don't know. That's how you get stuff put in your stuff, like dip in your stuff, laced in your stuff that you don't know. So if you got any type of illness, chronic illness, terminal illness, smoke the natural stuff. Drink the natural stuff, such as cannabis oil, and stay away from all that other stuff. I think that's all to be said about that. What do you feel about medical marijuana? Have you ever tried it before? Do you know somebody that has a card? What has been their side effects? What has been the upside as well as the downside? Do many of them get the munchies? As I've heard, they get the munchies where they're constantly hungry. And also, what do you feel about assisted suicide? As say a Dr. Kevorkian. Not completely like him. People look at Dr. Kevorkian and feel various things negative. They see him in a negative light because what has been spoken and said about him. But I'm trying to say doctors that work like him, but not completely do his complete practices, and yet they assist in the suicide of, say, those who are, diagnosed with terminal illnesses or even really raw chronic illnesses, in which many of these people are bedridden for. Are you with that assisted suicide, or are you in fact against that? Let me know in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe, and I'm gone.